make sure that whatever you're putting all your energy into, whether it's starting a company, whether it's being an actor, whether it's being a filmmaker, or like whatever the thing is, and whatever your career goals are, to make sure that you enjoy the process and put yourself into the process that you enjoy as often as possible.
If you're a professional actor challenged by an increasingly fragmented industry, then this podcast is for you. The Hollywood Actor Podcast is an anthology made up of the stories of actors building their bodies of work by redefining themselves, reframing their goals, and reevaluating their opportunities. No matter where we are in our careers, we're always looking to be inspired and to share ourselves across our community. This podcast offers that opportunity to guests and to listeners alike as we all discover what it means to be a working, professional, successful actor. This is Jamie Young, and you're listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Today's guest is Matt Page. Matt's a graduate of the College of Santa Fe. His credits include Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials 2015, Odd Thomas 2013, and the web series Enter the Dojo. You can follow him at Enter the Dojo Show on YouTube and as Master American Ameriken on both Facebook and on Instagram. Now let's spar with Hollywood actor Matt Page.
Well, I went to College of Santa Fe in 2001. I had been making independent short films and doing community theater and doing background work and just trying to figure out how to get into the industry. But I realized I needed more experience. I needed more training. I didn't have a lot of formal training. I had done some scene study classes in LA. And acted in, like I said, local plays and things. I was in some plays at a place called the Theater at Monmouth, really small theater in Maine. But I knew I needed more training to get where I wanted to go. So I went to the College of Santa Fe, and that was sort of that was the beginning of my formal training as an actor and a filmmaker.
Right. How much time did you spend in Los Angeles before you came out to the College of Santa Fe?
I want to say about a year and a half, little over a year and a half, long enough to figure out that with no money, no connections, no degree, no experience, and no idea what the heck I was doing, that maybe I needed to, I had skipped a couple of steps. I was in Los Angeles, and I spent some of the time being a production assistant. I was very, very bad. I was a terrible production assistant. I'm the guy that got lost with, going and getting the lunch order for the crew. I'm like the guy that was late and lost and all this stuff. So I wasn't good at that. And then I quit being a production assistant. I took acting classes, and just worked like regular jobs. Like I was a security guard for a while and just took scene study classes and tried to learn about the industry. But I was just so underprepared that it was hard for me to make any real progress. I did learn things from those classes. But mainly I learned that I was I really felt like I had skipped a bunch of steps. So I moved back east. I moved back to where I was from Maine. And like I said, I made a few independent films, just like little short films. I did some theater, and then finally decided that I probably needed to go to college to get a sense of what the heck I was doing.
Sure. And with your time in Maine, did you spend any time in New York City at all, getting to, have an understanding of what the theater scene was?
No, I actually I did meet an agent who wanted to send me to auditions in Boston and New York, but again I was because I auditioned for him and did well, but again I was so disorganized and broke, quite honestly, that even the idea of the expense of going to Boston or New York it was unrealistic, because I just had nothing to work with. I had no foundation, financial or professionally or creatively. I knew I was a creative person. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't have I didn't have a foundation from which to operate. So decided that I needed to go to college and applied to film school and got in and decided to go to College of Santa Fe. And that was the beginning of me figuring out the basic building blocks of not just the process of acting and filmmaking, but also perhaps beginning to understand what I might need to do to be prepared to try to make a living at it.
Yeah. Were you trying to learn a lot of little bits and pieces around the industry, or were you learning things primarily to set yourself up as an actor?
I was actually much more fixated on the filmmaking process, and I was really enamored with the generation of filmmakers that were sort of self-made filmmakers like Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and Spike Lee and Ed Burns, guys who had made independent films in their hometowns with very little money and had built a career out of it, and some of whom, in fact, everyone except Rodriguez ended up acting in their own films, either in small roles or major roles. So I thought, well, that's what I want to do. I just want to make my own work and figure out how to do a little bit of everything. And so I went to film school with the intention of learning the components of cinematography and recording sound and editing and things like that. And then on the side, kind of ended up doing more acting than I expected. And acting is a weird thing for me. Acting is something that I have sort of treated as, for most of my beginning of my career, treated as like a side thing that I like. If someone asked me to act in a film or act in a play, I would do it. But I was much more interested in creating some of my own work. And then eventually those two things kind of merged on their own.
Looking at it as acting as a part, just another part of equipment or a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it was something that I enjoyed doing, but it was something that I saw as a whole nother process. It was just, when you're acting, you're just a component of somebody else's project. Generally, you're like one piece of a bigger puzzle. Whereas if you write a film and direct it, and you maybe are trying to learn how to shoot things yourself and learning how to edit them yourself, you're kind of, you're really immersed in the evolution of this entire process. Whereas acting, you kind of have, a particular job, an important job, but you show up, you do your part, and then you're done, basically. And so I was interested in both of those separately, and it wasn't until many years later that I managed to create projects that sort of incorporated not just writing and directing and editing, but also acting and some of my own stuff. But I enjoy both, and I have enjoyed doing more acting in recent years, where that's my only responsibility: show up, know my stuff, do my work. But it's a very different process.
What was your experience at the College of Santa Fe as both an actor and then as a filmmaker?
It was really great. It was. They had a really interesting program at that time where they, on the one hand, they taught you very sort of high-level production technique. They definitely, they had sound stages and professional Super 16 millimeter cameras and great equipment and great facilities. And from a production standpoint, they would teach you very much how a professional movie set was likely to work. Yet artistically, they exposed us to all kinds of things that I had never heard of. We were required to take history of world cinema and experimental film classes that exposed me to the types of movies I didn't even know they made movies like that. Just all kinds of really, really far out there stuff. So that that when we did eventually graduate and go into the industry, we weren't only familiar with mainstream popular films, we were familiar with a whole variety of what you could do with the medium. And I felt like that really helped.
So you could begin to start finding your own voice as a filmmaker, maybe.
Yeah. And realize that it didn't have to be just the things we had grown up watching. It sort of expanded my understanding of what film could do and what it could be. And there were a lot of paths to that. You know, some students who took that program went in thinking they wanted to be writer directors, and then got into art installations and experimenting with video and sound signals, and creating all kinds of crazy stuff out of there that they weren't aware of until they went into the program. So I was glad to be exposed to all that stuff. And then as far as acting, I took a few acting classes that I really enjoyed. And then honestly, it also kind of helped just to act in other people's films, and to be asked to show up as an actor in other films, and kind of just get a different view of the process. And being exposed to all of those things while I was a student was really helpful and really informative.
How did you segue from the college into the burgeoning film industry in New Mexico?
Well, it was really interesting timing when I graduated, because the New Mexico film industry, you know, it has developed over many decades, but it was experiencing the beginnings of quite a boom that many people may argue hasn't really stopped since it grew. So from an acting standpoint, I made a film. It wasn't a great film, but I wrote and directed a film, and I played a small part, and a local talent agent attended the screening, saw my performance, and offered to represent me and send me on auditions. And so that was kind of a cool unintended benefit from making that film. And within my first 6 months, I got a part on In Plain Sight. I got a part in a small part on Breaking Bad, and I got a small part in an independent film, and just, you know, was kind of off and running, and like getting these bit parts. You know, they were small parts. They were a couple of days of work here and there, but beginning to be hired and paid as a union actor. And so that was really helpful, because I needed the money, and I was starting to learn what real movie and TV sets worked like. And then at the same time, I was learning how to I started a company, essentially. I wanted to figure out a way to make my own independent films, but I had to fund that stuff. So a friend of mine and I created a company called Riff Raff, where we would make industrial and promotional videos that and we would use that money to buy equipment, and then also fund some independent ventures. At least that was the idea. So I was kind of walking two paths straight out of college, supplementing my income with what little acting gigs I could get, and then creating corporate and promotional videos so that I could try to fund my own independent films.
Concentrating a little bit on your acting career, going back to the College of Santa Fe, did they similarly expose you, like they did with film, to the world of filmmaking, these different types of genres and techniques, and auteur filmmakers, to auteur actors, different types of world theater, those types of techniques? Did they really steep you in the art of the craft of acting?
It was definitely a component. I would say that some of the things that I remember being exposed to were much more, they were really out there. They were, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He created what's known as the lyrical film. It's not Lubitsch. It's Brakhage, Stan Brakhage. He did stuff like Dog Star Man and all these really like abstract, crazy experimental films, some of which he acted in and shot and edited and all this stuff. And there were more mainstream examples, but I would say that acting really was kind of, if there were auteur actor filmmakers in that program, a lot of the time they were more in the experimental genre. But again, I was still, as a fan, I was still watching things, even just being in film school. I was still, a huge fan of people who had built a career out of acting in their own films. Again, like Ed Burns, the people who had created their own work, and also being a fan of guys like, Kevin Costner, creating films where he was the director and star. And I was fascinated by actors who managed to do that, who managed to create and direct themselves in some of their own work.
But it seems like you're coming at it as more of looking at film as being this holistic medium where you're trying to get your hands on these different types of, there's so many different departments, so many different tasks that need to be accomplished to go towards this one overarching goal. And acting's kind of very much a part of that. But we're almost taking away the artistry, where we're looking at the things, all these different elements as being more technical. Is that kind of where you saw that you were starting to plug into the industry in more of a technical way than an artisan way, at least from the first? In
some ways. That makes me think of two things. Number one, I went to film school to try to figure out why my films did not look or sound like the movies that I watched. Because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure out. I was like, is it the equipment? Is it the money? Is it the lenses? Like why doesn't my stuff look or sound good? And it took a while of going to film school to realize, oh, wow, yeah, some of it's the equipment, some of it's the understanding of how to capture sound and images in a high level way, and learning the visual language and things like that. And then also some of it, I actually simultaneously began to understand that some non-traditional, some of my heroes that definitely were not taught in film school, like for instance, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme, I'm a huge fan of his, and I noticed years after being a fan of his films that he has a writing credit on most of his early work. And I thought, well, that's weird. I never really thought of him as a writer, but I thought, okay, well, there's a guy who knew that in order for him to become a successful actor, he probably needed to write vehicles for himself that showcased his talents. Whereas if he just showed up and auditioned as an actor, he might not be finding the same types of vehicles for himself. You know what I mean? Similarly to Sylvester Stallone, he has some film credits before Rocky, but it wasn't until he created a vehicle for himself and crafted a character for himself that would help drive his career in a way that if he perhaps had just auditioned as an actor for another 10 or 15 years, who knows if he would have become the actor that we all know him to be. He became an actor who fashioned vehicles for himself to showcase what he felt were his talents. And I guess that's where I sort of feel like I have been coming at it for a long time, thinking like, okay, I don't know if I'm a very strong actor. I don't know if I'm particularly good at just showing up and being an actor. But what I might be good at is crafting very specific types of projects that play to what I feel my strengths are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's less bringing yourself to the role and bringing the role to you, I think, is what we're kind of boiling it down to.
Exactly, because I wasn't classically trained. I had no, I couldn't do Shakespeare because I wasn't classically trained, and I had very minimal scene study class. I didn't go to a formal, I didn't go to Juilliard or someplace where I would really learn just acting, but I kept falling into acting opportunities, and they kept being presented, and I thought, well, I don't know if I'm any good at this. So what I want to do is how can I use my interest in filmmaking to craft, particular pieces that will do what I feel like I'm at least kind of good at as an actor. I feel like I'm kind of funny. I had some martial arts training. I had certain interests that I thought, well, maybe over time I can craft this into something that I feel like I'm good at, for better or worse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I was at drama school, we were taught that the Adler technique, like coming out of Stanislavski, obviously,
yeah.
There's the group theater, and then they started coming up with their own very slight different riffs on that overarching technique. And I think Adler was more about bringing yourself up to the role, and Strasberg is more about bringing the role to you, kind of coming from those different angles of the art, and then the technique of it, the technical asks of a role or a project. And I think I think the truth of a lot of these different things is that there's no black and white, but there's always that middle ground, that gray area, that sweet spot that we all have to kind of find for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was that I genuinely, I read An Actor Prepares, and I read a little bit of stuff. I read some of the literature on acting, and again, took some acting classes, but I found the process to be, I don't know. It's challenging. It's elusive. And so I think that does at times push me, even now, still pushes me toward the direction of the parts of the process that I feel like either I can control or that I can give myself the best opportunity to succeed. Because I feel like if I'm hired just as an actor and I'm only there for a couple of days and I'm not in control of anything, I'm just a hired actor, I feel like even if I feel prepared, I don't know if I'm going to be able to showcase my best work because there are other actors involved. There's, it depends on whether or not the camera was on me when I feel like I was doing my best take. It depends on whether or not the editor chooses that take. There's all those things, right, that are factors in whether or not, I've heard, I've had acting teachers talk about, the importance of trying to get yourself to the point where you're so in tune with your process that doesn't matter. But I don't feel like I'm there yet. So when I'm doing some of my own work, I have the comfort of saying, okay, well, I've written this, and if I feel like I need to rewrite it when I'm shooting it, I can do that because I'm in charge. If I am filming something, if I'm the director or at least the producer or I'm the editor, I know I can go in and choose what I feel are my best takes, and I have the best chance of presenting what I feel is my best work. And so I think that's the part of me that continues to be drawn to creating my own work in conjunction with being an actor.
Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening.